The rain came down in sheets, hammering the glass like 1,000 tiny fists demanding entry. Each drop was an insistent rhythm against the silence Alara Thorne had built for herself, one careful hour at a time. Inside her shop, the only sounds were the ones she controlled, the gentle tick and pause of a dozen clocks, their mechanisms counting down to nothing in particular, the soft rasp of her polishing cloth against brass, the faint metallic whisper of her tweezers gripping components smaller than grains of rice, the shallow, measured rhythm of her own breath, timed to match the swing of a pendulum. Control. That was the architecture of her existence. Every movement deliberate, every thought disciplined, every sense carefully, systematically dulled. The pocket watch in her hands was a maze of gears and springs, a constellation of perfect tiny machines that obeyed absolute laws. 136 components in this particular model. She had counted them, memorized them, could assemble the entire mechanism in complete darkness, if required. She could fix this. She could understand this. The universe of a watch was knowable, finite, safe. The balance wheel turned in its jeweled bearing, each oscillation a promise that some things in the world still followed immutable rules, predictable, logical, measurable, everything her own nature was not. The magnifying loop pressed against her eye socket was beginning to ache. She had been bent over this workbench for 6 hours without a break. Her back protested. Her fingers were beginning to stiffen. She ignored both. Pain was just another sensation to be managed, controlled, filed away in the same mental drawer where she kept hunger, loneliness, and the constant low-level dread that someone would discover what she really was. The shop around her was a reflection of that control. Every tool in its place, every surface clean. The walls painted a neutral gray that caught no eye and invited no questions. The single window facing the street was small and set high, revealing nothing of the interior to casual passers-by. The door was reinforced steel disguised as wood. The locks were the best money could buy. This was her fortress, her monastery, the place where Alara Thorne, clockmaker, existed, where the other thing, the wolf thing, did not. Her fingers moved with surgical precision, tweezers gripping a hairspring thinner than a human hair. One slip and the whole mechanism would fail. One moment of lost focus and hours of work would unravel. She breathed in through her nose, held it for 3 counts, released slowly through her mouth. The meditation her father had taught her when she was 12 years old and still believed the world could be fair. Matthias Thorne. Even now, 10 years after the earth had swallowed him, his voice lived in her head, steady as a metronome, calm as deep water, unshakable as stone. A warrior trusts his weapon, Little Gear. You trust your hands, make them perfect. He had called her that, Little Gear, because even as a child, she had been fascinated by the mechanisms of things, how they worked, how they could be taken apart and understood. He had encouraged it, brought her broken watches from estate sales and pawn shops, let her destroy them in the process of learning, never scolded her for failure, only asked her what she had learned. Matthias Thorne had been an alpha, not by temperament but by blood. Born into a minor pack in the Northern Territories, he had earned his rank the old way, through combat, through proving himself worthy. He had served in the Ironwood Regiment during what the humans called the Resource Wars. 20 years of his life given to a king he respected and a code he believed in. He had met Alara's mother, Nora, in a field hospital. She had been a healer, an Omega with a gift for easing pain. They had bonded fast and deep, the way soldiers did in wartime, knowing each day might be the last. Nora had died bringing Alara into the world. Complications the healers could not fix, even with shifter resilience. Matthias had been left with a newborn daughter and a grief that never fully healed. He could have returned to pack life, could have remarried, could have given Alara the stability of a community, the safety of numbers. He had chosen differently. He had looked at his infant daughter and seen what she was. Omega, rare, valuable, a prize that ambitious alphas would fight over, trade away, use as a political tool. So he had taken her and disappeared. Honorable discharge, new names, a quiet life in human cities where they could vanish into the crowds. He had raised her alone, taught her everything he knew. Not how to fight, though she learned that too. How to think like a soldier, how to assess terrain, how to identify exits, how to control her breathing, her heart rate, her scent, because that was the real danger for an Omega. The scent, the biological marker that announced her nature to anyone with shifter senses. In the old packs, it had meant protection. In the modern world, it meant being hunted. Matthias had found a way to teach her to suppress it, not hide it, erase it. The process had started when she was 10, old enough to understand why it was necessary, young enough that her biology was still malleable. Silver ash, taken from burned wolfsbane, mixed with alcohol and a dozen herbs whose names she had forgotten, applied to the scent glands at her wrists, throat, behind her ears, twice daily, every single day. It burned, not like fire, like acid, like something eating into her skin and rewriting the code beneath. For 2 years she had endured it, crying sometimes, never complaining, because Matthias had explained why, because he had shown her the news reports of Omegas taken, sold, bred like livestock by the criminal packs that operated in the shadows. Better to be nothing than to be prey. By the time she was 12, her scent was gone. Not masked, erased. She registered as human to any shifter who met her, a biological ghost. Matthias had been proud of her, and heartbroken, because he knew what it cost. The constant discipline, the severing of connection to her own nature, the loneliness of being the only one of your kind in a room full of people. But he had given her the tools to survive: precision, patience, control. And when the rogues had come, when they had burned through his defenses like they were paper, he had given her one more thing: time. He had held that door for 3 minutes. 3 minutes while she crawled through the window he had prepared years earlier for exactly this scenario. 3 minutes of buying her escape with his life. His last words to her, shouted through smoke and the sounds of violence, had been simple: "You are stronger than any alpha. Never forget." She had not forgotten. She had built her entire existence on that foundation. She had made her hands perfect. Some shifters wore perfumes. They layered themselves in chemicals, in manufactured fragrances designed to mask what lay beneath. Alara had learned a harder lesson. You did not hide the truth. You erased it. You became a blank page. No scent, no pack, no past. A ghost living in a city of 8 million souls, invisible because she had made herself nothing. The city helped. Its assault on the senses was constant and welcome. Exhaust fumes, stale cooking oil, the sour-sweet smell of garbage ripening in the summer heat, damp concrete, rust, the 10,000 anonymous odors of human density. It was a cacophony that drowned out the whisper of her true nature, the scent that would mark her as prey to anyone who knew how to hunt. Tonight, the full moon hung somewhere beyond the storm clouds. She could feel it, a dull ache behind her eyes, a restless thrumming in her blood, a pull that wanted to drag her out of this body and into something wild and terrible. The wolf stirred in its shallow grave. She pushed it down. She had practice. 10 years of practice. 10 years of burying the thing that wanted to claw its way free. Focus on the watch. Focus on the gears. The mainspring was wound too tight. Amateur work. Someone had forced it, trying to make time move faster, and had nearly broken the mechanism instead. She released the tension slowly, feeling the stored energy uncoil against her fingertips. Power under control, strength in restraint, her father's lessons in everything. The wind howled outside, a lonely sound that made the small hairs on her arms prickle. She ignored it. She was good at ignoring things: the full moon, the ache in her bones, the memory of what she had been before she learned to be nothing. Then the bell rang. It was bolted to the front door of her shop, a sharp jangling alarm meant for the rare customer who wandered in during business hours. But business hours had ended 3 hours ago. The closed sign hung in the window. The storm outside was a wall of water and wind. No one should be out in this. No rational person would be walking the streets in a deluge that turned gutters into rivers. Alara froze, her breath caught in her throat. The tiny screwdriver in her hand suddenly felt useless, a child's toy. The ticking of the clock seemed to grow louder, faster, counting down to something she did not want to meet. Silence. Maybe it was just the wind, a loose shutter banging, her own nerves pulled tight by the moon and the storm and the isolation she had chosen. She let out a slow, careful breath and turned back to her workbench. The door creaked open. Cold air rushed into the shop, carrying the smell of the storm with it. Rain and wet earth and asphalt, ozone from lightning strikes somewhere close. And beneath it all, something else, something that made every instinct in her body scream a single word: run. The scent was wild and dark, pine needles and winter frost, old forests and high mountains, and blood, so much blood. The metallic tang of it hit her like a fist to the gut, thick and coppery in the back of her throat. A man stood in the doorway. No, not a man. A giant. His frame filled the entrance, broad shoulders blocking the streetlight beyond. He swayed for a moment, one hand braced against the doorframe, his head bowed. Rain dripped from his dark hair, pooling at his feet in spreading puddles. He took one step inside, then another. His boots left wet, dark prints on her floorboards. Each step was deliberate, controlled, but she could see the tremor in his muscles, the way his jaw was locked tight against pain. He was hurt, badly. The human part of her, the soft part she had cultivated like a hothouse flower, felt a flicker of pity. This was someone who needed help, someone who had nowhere else to go. The other part of her, the old and terrified part, the wolf that knew predators when it smelled them, screamed louder. He lifted his head. Even in the dim light from her work lamp, she could see the exhaustion carved into his features. A strong jaw shadowed with stubble, a straight nose that had been broken at least once, a mouth set in a grim line of endurance, a jagged scar cut through one eyebrow, disappearing into his hairline. He looked like a man carved from granite and bad weather, a creature built to endure. But his eyes, they were searching, desperate. He opened his mouth and the word that came out was a ruin of sound, raw and scraped. Please. Then his legs gave out. He did not crumble. He fell like a great tree coming down, all at once, inevitable. The floorboards groaned under the impact. The sound echoed in the sudden terrible silence, louder than the storm outside. He lay sprawled on the floor of her shop, utterly still. Alara did not breathe. For a full minute, the only sound was the rain and the frantic hammering of her own heart against her ribs. She should leave, lock the door behind her, and melt back into the city's shadows. Let someone else find him. Let this be someone else's problem. This was the kind of trouble that got people like her killed. A shifter, bleeding and cornered, was a lit fuse on a stick of dynamite. But she could not move. His scent was overwhelming. It was not just wolf. It was something older, more primal. A scent that spoke of absolute dominance, of sovereign command. It was the scent of an alpha, not just any alpha. This was power, raw and terrifying and completely beyond anything she had ever encountered. Slowly, as if moving through deep water, she pushed back her stool and stood. Her legs trembled beneath her. She crept toward him, her bare feet silent on the wood. He was lying on his side, his face turned away from her. A heavy coat, soaked through, clung to his massive frame. The smell of blood was stronger now, a hot, cloying cloud. She knelt beside him, her hands hovered uselessly in the air. "Can you hear me?" The words came out as a whisper, thin and uncertain. No response. His breathing was shallow, a ragged hitch in his chest that spoke of broken things inside. She had to see the wound. With trembling fingers, she reached out and gently pushed aside the heavy fabric of his coat. Her fingertips brushed cold, wet leather, then skin. It was fever-hot beneath the rain's chill. Her touch jolted him. A low sound rumbled in his chest, deep as shifting stone. Not directed at her. It was the sound of a wounded animal fighting its own pain. She found the first wound on his shoulder. A puncture, clean-edged and deep, the kind made by a crossbow bolt. The second was in his thigh, just above the knee. The artery there was severed or close to it. Blood seeped steadily, darker than it should be, silver-tipped. She recognized the blackened edges of the wounds. Silver poisoning. For a shifter, it was worse than the injury itself. It would fight their healing, burn them from the inside out. Without thinking, she pressed her hand against the shoulder wound, trying to slow the bleeding. A human gesture. Probably useless for his kind, but it was all she knew. The moment her palm made contact with his blood, the world shattered. A shockwave went through her, a bolt of pure electricity that shot up her arm and slammed into her chest. Her breath was ripped from her lungs in a sharp gasp. The thing inside her, the wolf she had kept caged and starved and silent for a decade, did not stir. It exploded. It rose up like a tidal wave, a flood of pure instinct that she had no hope of controlling. Every sense she had carefully dulled roared to life. She could suddenly smell everything. The rain-soaked wool of his coat, the worn leather of his boots, the iron tang of his blood, and beneath it all, his true scent, the scent of a king. Pine and winter frost and raw, untamed power. Authority that needed no crown. Her own scent, the one she had buried under a mountain of denial and discipline and soap, broke free. It uncoiled like a living thing. The telltale fragrance of an omega, sweet grass and night-blooming jasmine, and a vulnerability that was a death sentence in the wrong company. The man on the floor jerked. His whole body went rigid. The sound in his chest deepened, changed. It was not just pain anymore. It was recognition. His eyes snapped open. They were not brown or blue or any human color. They were molten gold, burning with an impossible light, the pupils blown wide. They locked on her with the weight of a physical blow. He did not see a woman in a worn sweater kneeling on her shop floor. He saw her, what she was, what she had been hiding. His gaze flickered down to her hand, still pressed against his shoulder, her palm slick and red with his blood. Her wolf howled in her mind, a sound of terror and triumph and something else, something she did not want to name. It knew him. It recognized his blood. It bowed its head in submission, an instinct so deep and primal that she felt her own spine curve. "You!" He breathed the word. It was a blade of sound, cutting through everything. His hand shot out, impossibly fast for a wounded man. He did not grab her arm. He did not push her away. His fingers, strong and calloused, wrapped around her wrist. His touch was fire, searing her skin. His blood on her hand, his hand on her skin. A circuit completed. Power poured out of him and into her. Not a gentle connection, a violent claiming. The dormant parts of her, the heightened senses, the strength, the deep well of shifter life roared into existence all at once. The ticking clocks sounded like hammers. The single bulb overhead burned like the sun. She was drowning in him, in his pain, his rage, his sheer suffocating presence. She tried to pull back. A strangled sound caught in her throat. But his grip was iron. He was bleeding out on her floor, yet he held her with the strength of something beyond human. His golden eyes held hers. A storm of disbelief and something else swirled in their depths, something that looked terrifyingly like destiny. Her carefully built world of silence and control was gone, burned to ash in a single heartbeat. The ghost was dead. In her place was a terrified Omega, scent marked and claimed by the blood of a dying Alpha King. He stared at the blood on her skin, then back at her face, a dawning horror mixed with the pain in his expression. The blood on her hand began to feel different. Not just wet, not just warm from his body heat. It was hot, burning, a fire sinking through her skin into her very bones. His blood was not just a stain. It was something alive, something with intention. The heat deepened. Tendrils of it snaked up her veins, spreading from her palm through her wrist, her forearm, climbing toward her heart. It was writing something, a story she never wanted to read. His golden eyes were seeing past the plain clothes and the scentless disguise, down to the truth she had kept chained in the dark for 10 years. "What are you?" The question was a thunderclap in the small shop. Each word scraped raw. Alara's voice was a stone lodged in her throat. Words had been her first sacrifice to this life of hiding. She rarely used them. And now they would not come. Her wolf was screaming in her skull, submission, terror, and a single horrifying possessive word that made no sense. Mine. He tried to push himself up, his muscles corded with strength that defied the wounds, the blood loss, the silver burning through his system. The movement was a mistake. Fresh blood, dark and thick, welled from the shoulder wound. It spilled over her hand in a hot rush. A groan was torn from his chest. His eyes lost focus, the golden light dimming. He was dying. The thought was clinical, cold, and it was followed by a wave of panic so profound it buckled her knees. It was not just pity. It was deeper, primal, an animal terror at the thought of the apex predator in the room ceasing to exist. The alpha must not fall. What pack? She had no pack. She was nothing. A ghost. But the blood on her skin disagreed. It was binding her to him, a chain forged in agony and power. He collapsed back, his grip on her wrist going slack. This was her chance, her one chance to run, to rip her hand away and flee into the storm. Let the city swallow her again. Let someone else find the body. She did not move. Leaving him felt like tearing out her own heart. An impossible feeling, insane. He was a stranger, a monster, a threat to everything she had built. And her wolf was whining, a low, mournful sound in the back of her mind begging her not to leave him. Damn it! The words were a rusty scrape of sound, the first words she had spoken aloud in days. She shifted her weight, hooking her shoulder under his arm. "Get up, you have to get up." He blinked, his focus swimming back for just a moment. He looked at her, then at the open door, then back to her. Understanding flickered across his face. He was exposed here, a target. He nodded, barely perceptible. Getting him to his feet was like trying to raise a fallen oak. He was a mountain of muscle and bone. She braced herself, straining against his weight. The scent of him was dizzying, pine and storm and the hot iron of his blood. It soaked into her clothes, into her hair, erasing her carefully constructed absence. He leaned on her, his weight crushing. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest. "Where?" "Upstairs." The stairs behind the counter were narrow and steep, a death trap. They took them one at a time, a slow, agonizing climb. He grunted with each step, fresh pain radiating from him in waves. She could feel it, not just sense it, feel it. A phantom ache in her own shoulder, an echo of his agony. The bond was forming, a parasite, a gift. She did not know which. Her apartment was as sparse as her life. A bed, a small table, a single chair, a window that looked out onto a brick wall. It was a cell, but it had been her cell, safe, silent. Until now. He collapsed onto the narrow bed. The frame groaned in protest. He filled the entire space, a dark, wounded king on a pauper's throne. His head lolled to the side, his eyes closed. For a terrible second, she thought his heart had stopped. Then she heard it, the faint, fluttering beat, the ragged pull of air into his lungs. She lit an old oil lamp. The flame pushed the worst of the shadows into the corners. In the flickering light, he looked even more formidable. His face was pale beneath tanned skin, but his features were harsh, unforgiving. This was not a man who knew softness. She had to see the wounds properly. Her hands shook as she tore his shirt. Fine wool, soaked and ruined. The fabric gave way with a sound unnaturally loud in the quiet. The shoulder wound was worse than she had thought. Deep, the edges darkened by silver poisoning. The thigh wound was the same. Clean punctures, professional. Someone had tried to kill him with precision. She needed water, cloth, thread. She moved on instinct, gathering supplies from her small washroom. Her mind was a storm of fear. Who did this? Who could wound a creature of this power? And who would be coming to finish the job? They would be hunting him, and now they would hunt her too. She returned with a bowl of warm water and strips of clean linen. Her hand hovered over his skin. Touching him again felt like putting her hand back into fire. She had no choice. She began to clean the wounds, her touch as gentle as she could manage. He flinched. A low growl vibrated in his chest, but he did not wake. His skin was fever-hot everywhere except around the injuries. There it was cold, unnaturally cold. As she worked, her fingers brushed against something hard tucked into his belt. Curiosity warred with fear. She needed to know who he was, not just what. She slid the object free. It was not a weapon. It was a small leather case. Inside, a heavy piece of metal, a medallion. She turned it over in the lamplight. The blood drained from her face. A wolf's head, rendered in stark lines. A crown of iron thorns pressed into its brow. She knew this symbol. Every shifter on the continent knew it. The sigil of the Ironwood clan, the ruling pack, the royal line. This was not just an alpha. This was him. Cale Ironwood, the winter wolf, the unmated king who had torn through rival packs to secure his crown before his 30th year. A man whose name was whispered like a curse, a bogeyman used to frighten shifter children, and he was bleeding out on her bed. Her hands began to shake. She gripped the edge of the mattress to steady herself. She had to finish. She took a needle and thread, the same strong, fine thread she used for watch straps. She began to stitch the shoulder wound closed. It was brutal work, clumsy. Her hands were made for tiny gears and delicate springs, not this. Each stitch felt like a violation. Each pull of the thread seemed to bind her closer to him, sewing her fate into his. When she was done, she wrapped his torso in clean bandages. Her hands shook so badly she could barely tie the knot. She sank back on her heels, exhausted, the adrenaline fading, leaving a hollow, trembling emptiness. The room was silent except for his breathing, already deeper, more even. Shifter healing was powerful. Even with silver in his system, his body was beginning the work of repair. She watched him. This myth made flesh, the king of their kind, laid low, vulnerable. His power was still there, a pressure in the air, a low-frequency hum that vibrated in her bones. "What are you?" he had asked her. "An Omega, the lowest rank, born to soothe, born to nurture." In the old packs, they were revered. In the modern world, they were targets, weaknesses, bargaining chips. That was why she hid. His eyes opened. The gold was back, sharper, clearer, the fever receding. He looked at the bandages, at the needle and thread on the table. Then his gaze landed on her. He did not speak for a long time. He just watched, his expression unreadable. "You did not run." It was not a question, a statement of fact. She shook her head, unable to find words. He pushed himself up onto one elbow, slow but deliberate. His eyes never left her face. "They will smell my blood on you, the ones who did this. Others. My scent is a beacon. You are standing in its heart." She flinched. She knew. Of course she knew. "There is nowhere in this city you can hide now. Nowhere on this continent." He held her gaze, a king-passing sentence. The air grew thick, heavy with laws she did not fully understand, and consequences that felt inevitable. The mark on her hand, where his blood had first touched her, began to ache. A dull, insistent heat. He saw her glance at it. A strange look passed over his face. "That blood is not a stain. It is an oath. You answered it, whether you wanted to or not." He shifted, his gaze sweeping over her small, bare room, over the ghost of a life she had tried to build. He looked back at her, the kneeling, nameless Omega who had saved him. "You belong to the crown now, little ghost." The words hung in the air, heavy as iron, cold as winter. "You belong to the crown now." Not a threat, not even a promise. A simple, brutal statement of fact, like saying the moon commands the tides, like saying winter brings snow. Alara felt the declaration settle into her bones, a weight she was never meant to carry. She had spent her life belonging to nothing, to no one. It was the entire foundation of her survival. Now a king had claimed her as territory. Her first instinct was to deny it, to find her voice and scream that she belonged only to herself, but the words died unborn. The look in his golden eyes was not cruel, not possessive. It was worse. It was certain, as if he was reading a truth written in a language only he could understand. The mark on her palm throbbed in agreement, a pulse that beat in time with his heart, not her own. He watched her, missing nothing. He saw the flicker of defiance in her eyes, the terror that extinguished it, the way she held herself, a fragile barrier against a world that had just been torn open. Something crossed his face, pity, regret. Then it was replaced by the granite mask of command. "What is your name?" She swallowed, the sound loud in the silence. "Alara." He repeated it, testing the sound. The single word spoken in his low rasp felt like judgment and benediction all at once. "Alara." Her skin prickled. "You have no pack mark, no scent of allegiance. You smell of nothing. How?" The question she had dreaded her entire adult life. "I am careful." It was a pathetic answer, a child's lie. His eyes narrowed. He knew it was a lie, but he did not push. Not yet. Instead, he swung his legs over the side of the bed, planting his bare feet on her floor. He moved stiffly, pain etched in the tight line of his mouth, but he stood. He was immense. The low ceiling seemed to shrink around him. "The ones who attacked me were not shifters. They were hired blades, human, but they used silver." He touched the bandages on his shoulder. "Tipped in wolfsbane, laced with it." Her blood went cold. Silver and wolfsbane together. A poison designed not just to wound, but to destroy a shifter's ability to heal, to burn them from the inside. It was a miracle he was standing. "They will have a tracker, someone who can follow my scent even in this storm. We do not have long." "We." The word was a hook in her gut. "I have to go." The words rushed out in a panicked breath. "I cannot be here. I cannot." He turned slowly, his golden eyes pinning her in place. "You think leaving this room will save you?" A bitter smile touched his lips. "Alara, look at your hand." She looked. Against her pale skin, where his blood had spilled, a mark was forming. Not a stain anymore. Something else. Delicate lines like black ink bleeding beneath the surface. Faint, a ghost of an image. But it was there. A wolf's head, crowned in thorns, his sigil, branded into her flesh by his blood. Her breath hitched. "What is this?" "A complication." His voice was flat. He looked at the mark on her hand. The look on his face was grim, weary. "My blood carries the weight of my line, of the crown. It should not have reacted to you. It has never reacted to anyone." He took a step closer. The air crackled. Her wolf, which had been quiet since its violent awakening, stirred again. It was not afraid of him. It was drawn to him, recognizing its alpha, its king, something more. She flinched back, stumbling a step. "Stay away from me." His eyes flashed. "That will be difficult." The sound vibrated through the floorboards, a growl. "When your scent is calling to every part of me." Her scent. She had no scent, but she did. She could smell it herself now, faintly. The sweet grass and jasmine uncoiling in the air, no longer masked by her control. To his senses it must be deafening. An Omega's scent, a beacon. He stopped, holding himself in check with visible effort. The muscles in his jaw bunched. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the raw instinct was controlled, locked down. "They are coming. We leave now." Leave to where? Her world was these four walls, this city block, the quiet gray life she had built. "To my territory, to the north." The north. A land of ice and stone and feral packs who still followed old laws. A place where an Omega would be torn apart. "No." The word was small but firm. "I will not." He took the final step that separated them. He did not touch her. He did not have to. His presence was a physical force, stealing her air. "You stitched my wound. You cleaned it with your own hands. You bound yourself to me with thread and mercy, and my blood branded you in return. You think the old magic gives you a choice?" It was not mercy, it was instinct, stupid suicidal instinct. "I will not be your prisoner." His expression hardened. "It is better than being a corpse. They will not be gentle when they find you. They will want to know how I survived. Who helped me? They will peel you apart piece by piece to get those answers." The words painted a picture so vivid she felt a tremor of pure horror. He was right. She knew he was right. Her quiet life was over. The ghost was dead. All that was left was Alara, the girl with the king's blood on her hands. He saw the surrender in her eyes. He gave a sharp nod. "Get your coat." She had nothing but the clothes on her back and a thin wool coat, but she retrieved it, her movements stiff, robotic. This was not happening. It was a nightmare. She would wake up to ticking clocks and the smell of oil and metal. He was already at his door, listening, not with his ears, with his entire body, perfectly still. A predator sensing the changing wind. "They are here, 2 floors down, moving up." Panic seized her, cold and sharp, her heart hammered. She looked around her tiny apartment, at the life she was about to lose. It was not much, but it had been hers. It had been safe. He turned to her. In the lamplight, the scar over his eye looked like a brand. "There is one way out. It will not be pleasant." He looked at the window. Beyond it, a 3-story drop to a narrow alley filled with trash and darkness. "You are insane." "I am alive, and I intend to stay that way." He moved to the window, unlatched it, pushed it open. Wind and rain lashed into the room. "You will do exactly as I say. Do you understand?" She nodded, mute. "I will go first. I will be below you. If you fall, I will catch you." Footsteps pounded on the stairs outside, heavy, ominous. They were coming. He swung one leg over the sill, then the other. He clung to the frame, his body braced against the slick brick. Rain soaked him instantly. He looked back, his golden eyes blazing. Now Alara. Her name was a command, a lifeline. The door to her apartment splintered. A boot kicked it once, twice. She did not think. She scrambled to the window, climbed out. The wind tried to tear her from the wall. The alley below seemed miles away. The door crashed open behind her. She did not look back. She let go. For a weightless second, she was falling. Then strong arms circled her waist. She slammed into a body hard as stone. He absorbed the impact with a grunt, his arms a cage of steel around her. He held her against his chest for a heartbeat. She could feel the rhythm of his heart. Steady, powerful. He set her on her feet, kept a grip on her arm, pulled her into the deeper shadows. 2 figures appeared in the window frame above. Large, cloaked. They had not seen them yet. He pulled her down the alley. His steps silent despite his size. She had to run to keep up, her feet slipping on wet pavement. They emerged onto a deserted street. The rain was easing, but the air was heavy, cold. He led her to a vehicle parked half a block away. Dark, brutal, built for war. "Get in." She hesitated. Getting in felt final, the end of everything. His patience snapped. "Now." She climbed inside. The interior smelled of leather and him. He slammed the door, got in the driver's side. The engine roared to life. He pulled away from the curb. No headlights. A black shadow gliding through rain-slicked streets. She looked back once, saw the 2 figures drop from her window into the alley, already searching. It was too late. She was gone. The mark on her hand burned, silent, searing. She belonged to the crown now. And the king was taking her home. They drove into the night. The city lights faded behind them. Ahead lay only darkness and the mountains. Silence was a weapon Cale Ironwood wielded with the precision of a master. He drove through the sleeping city, his large hands steady on the wheel, his golden eyes scanning every shadow, every alleyway, every reflection in storefront glass. He was not just driving. He was hunting for hunters. They had been driving for hours. The escape from her apartment felt like a lifetime ago, though the clock on the dashboard showed it had been less than 3 hours. The rain had stopped somewhere around midnight. Now the roads were just wet, slick, reflecting the sparse streetlights like ribbons of oil. The air inside the vehicle was thick with his concentration, a palpable pressure that made it hard for Alara to breathe. She sat rigid in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap, her thin coat a pathetic shield against the reality of what had just happened. Her apartment was miles behind them now, a crime scene she could never return to. Ahead lay the north, a word that tasted of ice and blood. The city lights blurred past the window, painting fleeting streaks of neon and white across the king's harsh profile. He was a creature of stark angles and severe lines, a living sculpture of sovereign will. His power hummed through the leather seats, through the very floor of the truck. It seeped into her bones, a constant invasive presence. Her reawakened senses were screaming, overwhelmed by the sheer proximity of an alpha of his magnitude. Every nerve ending felt raw, exposed. She chanced a glance at her palm. The mark was darker now, more defined. A vivid shadow of his sigil burned into her skin, a brand, a map, a claim. It pulsed with faint warmth, a constant reminder of the blood that had sealed her fate. "They will find your shop." His voice startled her out of her thoughts. Low, rough, devoid of inflection. "They will find your scent, what little there is of it." "There is nothing to find," she whispered, her voice tight. "No family, no records. I never existed." He glanced at her, a quick, sharp look. "Everyone exists somewhere. Everyone comes from a pack. Not me." The denial was automatic. The lie she had told herself so many times it felt like truth. He did not argue. He simply turned his attention back to the road. The silence stretched, heavy, laced with unspoken questions. He was a king. Kings did not tolerate mysteries in their territory, and she was, by his own declaration, his territory now. He drove them out of the city's heart, toward the industrial outskirts where streetlights grew sparse and buildings devolved into skeletal warehouses and rusted chain-link fences. The transition was gradual. Lights to shadows, concrete to gravel, the urban world bleeding into something older. He pulled the vehicle into a cavernous, abandoned loading dock. The darkness inside was absolute. He killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of rain dripping from a hole in the corrugated metal roof and the ragged whisper of her own breathing. "Why are we stopping?" "They are following. A single car. No headlights. They have been behind us since we left your street." Her blood turned to ice. She strained to look through the rear window, but saw only impenetrable blackness. Her human eyes were useless. But he could see, he could hear, he could smell. He was the predator, and he had led the other wolves into his trap. "Stay in the truck." The words were not a request. They were a command carved in stone. He opened his door and slipped out into the darkness, silent as smoke. The door clicked shut, plunging her into even deeper isolation. She was alone, trapped in a metal box, listening. Her heart hammered against her ribs. A frantic bird in a cage. Her reawakened senses, clumsy and untrained, were a torment. She could hear things she did not want to hear. The scuttling of rats in the warehouse corners, the drip of water somewhere distant, the creak of metal settling. And then another sound, the crunch of tires on gravel, slow, cautious. A car door opening, then another. Soft footsteps, deliberate, men who were trying to be silent. Muffled voices cut through the rain. "He was here. The scent is strong. Find him. The client wants him dead before dawn. And find the girl. She helped him. She has to be eliminated." The girl, her. The words were a physical blow. They knew about her. They were looking for her. The fragile hope that this was all a mistake, a terrible case of wrong place and wrong time, shattered into a million pieces. Then the sounds of violence began. It was not a prolonged battle. It was a swift, brutal execution. A choked cry, cut short. The sickening wet crunch of bone breaking. The heavy thud of a body hitting concrete. Silence. Then another set of footsteps, running this time, desperate, panicked flight. It was cut short by a sound that tore through the night, a sound that bypassed her ears and went straight to the primal core of her being. A growl, not the low warning rumble she had heard before. This was the full, unrestrained sound of the Alpha unleashed. It was a promise of death, a tearing, vicious snarl that spoke of ripped flesh and shattered spines. It was the sound of the apex predator removing a threat. She squeezed her eyes shut, her hands flying to her ears, but she could not block it out. She could feel it in her bones, a sympathetic vibration that made her own wolf cower and whine. A single piercing scream, then silence, profound, ringing, somehow more terrifying than the noise that had come before. The driver's side door opened. Kael slid back into the seat. He was untouched, not a scratch visible on him, but the air around him was different, charged, electric with the aftermath of violence. The scent of his rage, sharp and ozone like a lightning strike, filled the small cabin. He said nothing. He simply started the engine and pulled out of the warehouse, leaving the darkness and the bodies behind. They drove for another hour, leaving the city's dying glow behind them, plunging into the deep, unending darkness of the countryside. The road became a narrow ribbon of asphalt winding through dense forest. Trees crowded in on either side, their branches like skeletal arms reaching for the truck. He finally pulled over onto a gravel shoulder overlooking a valley bathed in pale moonlight. He cut the engine. This time the silence was different, the quiet of the wild, crickets chirping, wind sighing through pines. "They will send more." His voice was flat. He was no longer looking at the road. He was looking at her, his golden eyes seeming to glow in the darkness. "Who are they?" she asked, finding a sliver of courage. "Who wants you dead?" A muscle in his jaw clenched. "A rival. A man who believes my crown should be his. A fool." He paused. "And he hired humans to do his work. It is cleaner that way. It avoids a pack war, officially." His gaze dropped to her hands, still clenched in her lap. "He will not stop. And now that he knows you exist, he will see you as leverage, a weakness he can exploit." The words landed like stones. "I am not your weakness." The denial came out shaking with fury and fear. "I am nothing to you. You are wrong." In a movement too fast to track, he reached across the console and took her hand. Not her wrist this time. He laced his fingers through hers, his large, calloused hand engulfing her own. His touch was an electric shock, sending a jolt straight to her heart. He turned her hand over, his thumb stroking the brand on her palm. "This says you are mine. My blood has claimed you. The old magic has bound you. Do you think that means nothing?" She tried to pull her hand away, but his grip was gentle and absolute. She was trapped. "I do not believe in old magic. It believes in you." His voice dropped to a raw, possessive rumble that vibrated through her bones. "Your wolf believes. I can feel it. It is awake now, and it recognizes its alpha." She could not deny it. The creature inside her was a turmoil of conflicting instincts, terrified of his power yet yearning to submit to it, wanting to run and wanting to press closer. It was a part of her she did not know, a stranger living under her skin. "Let me go," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Please, just let me disappear again. I am good at it. No one will ever find me." A look of profound weariness crossed his face. For a fleeting moment he was not a king. He was just a man, scarred, burdened. "It is too late for that, Alara. From the moment my blood touched your skin, you became part of this, part of my world, my war." He released her hand, but the heat of his touch lingered, a phantom brand on top of the real one. He looked out at the dark valley, at the sliver of moon hanging in the sky. "The north is 2 days' drive. In my lands, you will be protected." Protected? The word sounded like a lie. How could she be safe with him? He was the epicenter of the danger, the storm she was caught in. "And what happens then?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "When we reach your home, what am I to you?" He was silent for a long time. The wind howled softly outside, a lonely, mournful sound. Finally he spoke. "You will be what you need to be to survive, and I will be what I swore never to be." He turned his head, his golden eyes meeting hers in the darkness of the truck. "The moon has made its choice. Now we live with the consequences." He started the engine again, pulled back onto the road, heading north into the endless dark. The silence that followed was absolute. Miles passed in wordless tension. Alara stared out the window, watching the black pines blur into a solid wall. She felt hollowed out. The girl who repaired watches, the ghost who haunted the city, was well and truly dead. They drove through the night without stopping. 6 more hours on roads that grew narrower and steeper with each passing mile. The city was a distant memory. They were deep in wilderness now. Dawn found them in the foothills of the great northern mountains. The sky bled from black to bruised purple to pale, watery gray. The air grew colder, cleaner. It smelled of pine and wet stone and coming snow. This was his land. She could feel it. The very atmosphere bent to his presence. He pulled into a hidden alcove off the main road, concealed by ancient firs. A structure waited there. Not a house. A bunker, military grade. Concrete and steel disguised by decades of moss and vine growth. "We rest here, 2 hours, then we move." He got out, moved stiffly, the long drive and the poisoned wounds taking their toll even on him. She followed, her legs unsteady. The cold mountain air stung her lungs, a shocking contrast to the city's humid smog. The bunker door was reinforced steel. Kael worked the lock with practiced efficiency. It swung open on well-oiled hinges. Inside was darkness. Then a light flared, an old oil lamp held by a figure that materialized from the shadows. "About damn time." The voice was rough as gravel. Amused. The lamp lifted, illuminating a face carved by time and violence. The man was in his 60s, broad-shouldered despite his age. An eye patch covered his left eye. The right eye, sharp and assessing, took in Kael's condition, then shifted to Alara. "Matthias's kid." It was not a question, a statement of recognition. Alara's breath caught. The man stepped forward into the fuller light. He was dressed in worn combat fatigues, a knife strapped to his thigh, his remaining eye the color of winter ice. "Torrin Ashford." He extended a hand. Not to Kael, to her. "Sergeant Major, retired. Served with your father for 15 years. Last saw you when you were knee-high and still believed in fairy tales." She took his hand, numb. His grip was firm, calloused, the handshake of a soldier. "Now you are stuck with this brooding bastard." He gestured at Kael with his chin. "My condolences." "Torrin," Kael's voice held a warning. "What? I speak truth. You brood. It is your defining characteristic." But Torrin was already moving. All business. He set the lamp down on a metal table, gestured for Kael to sit. "Let me see the damage." Kael shrugged out of his coat, his shirt. The bandages Alara had applied were soaked through, dark with blood and something else, a greenish tinge that spoke of infection. Torrin unwrapped the dressings with efficient movements, no wasted motion. The shoulder wound was angry, inflamed, the edges blackened. "Silver and wolfsbane." Torrin's voice was flat. "You picked a fight with professionals." "I did not pick it. Lysander did." At the name, something shifted in the air, a heaviness. Torrin glanced at Alara, seemed to make a decision. "He has made his move then, called in his markers, hired the best killers money can buy." Torrin cleaned the wounds with alcohol that had to burn like hellfire. Kael did not flinch, did not make a sound, and rallied the southern packs. Torrin continued. 3 of them so far, promises of stable succession, an end to the curse. He applied fresh bandages, tight, professional. "You broke the oath, my king. They see that as weakness, or madness. Hard to say which frightens them more." Kael's jaw tightened. "I did not choose this." "No one ever does." Torrin's remaining eye shifted to Alara again. "But here we are." He stepped back, crossed his arms. "Lysander is moving fast. By now he has heard you survived the city ambush. He will adjust. Strike harder. He has 280 warriors pledged to him. We have 120 at the Citadel, plus whatever civilians can hold a weapon." The numbers were brutal, cold. He is also holding hostages. 2 villages in the southern pass, 40 civilians, women, children, using them as shields. Kael stood, slowly, the movement controlled despite the pain. "Then we remove the shields. I take a strike team, 30 warriors. We extract the hostages. Then we siege him." Torrin nodded, already expecting this. "I will coordinate defense preparations at the Citadel. Mira is already fortifying. Supplies are tight but manageable." "Who is Mira?" Alara asked, her first words since entering the bunker. Both men looked at her. "Mira Silverthorn," Torrin said. "Den mother, former intelligence officer, sharp as they come. She will want to vet you thoroughly. Fair warning." "Vet me?" "You appeared at a convenient moment. Unknown Omega. No pack affiliation. Saved the king's life. She will ask hard questions." "Good," Kael said. "I want her to." He looked at Alara. "Trust is earned here, not given." "Understood." She met his gaze, held it. Torrin made a sound that might have been approval. "Matthias trained you well. You do not flinch easy. He taught me to survive. Best gift a father can give." Torin moved to a weapons locker, began pulling out gear, rifles, knives, ammunition. "When do we move?" Kale asked. 36 hours. Torin checked his watch. "Gives you time to heal, time to brief the team. Lysander will reach the Citadel in 4 days. Our window to extract hostages is 48 hours before his main force arrives." Kale nodded, accepting the timeline. "Alara will come." Both men looked at her again. "I need someone I trust managing logistics, supply tracking. She has the skill set." She opened her mouth to protest, then stopped. Because it was true. Matthias had taught her. Inventory management, resource allocation, how to make limited supplies stretch. And because Kale was testing her, seeing if she would step up or step back. "I can do that," she said, her voice steady. "Good." Torin handed her a tablet. Old military model, ruggedized, already loaded with supply manifests. "This is our current inventory. Food, water, medical, ammunition. Tell me what we need." She took the tablet, scanned the data. Her mind shifted gears, from fear to analysis. Numbers did not lie. Patterns were clear. 3 minutes later, she looked up. "You are short on antibiotics, wound care supplies. If you are planning sustained combat, infection will be your biggest threat after casualties. You also need more water purification tablets. And your ammunition distribution is uneven. Too much rifle, not enough pistol for close quarters." Torin's eyebrow rose. "Matthias trained you very well." He smiled. It was grim but genuine. "Welcome to the war, girl. Glad to have you." They rested for 2 hours. Alara on a cot in the corner. Kael and Torin in low conversation, planning. When she woke, it was mid-morning. The sun was well above the horizon now. The light through the bunker's small window was pale gold. Time to move. The drive to the Citadel took the rest of the day. 6 more hours on increasingly treacherous mountain roads. The roads grew rougher, narrower, climbing into true mountain territory. The trees here were giants, the silence profound. They crested a final ridge as the sun was setting. And there it was. Ironwood Citadel. Not a castle. A fortress. Military compound carved into the mountainside. Stone and steel. Watchtowers, barracks, training yards. Everything built for function, not beauty. Home. Kale's voice held something she had not heard before. Not quite warmth, but close. Belonging. They drove through gates that looked like they could withstand siege engines. Guards snapped to attention, salutes sharp and precise. Inside the compound, wolves moved with purpose, training, preparing. The scent of weapon oil and sweat and discipline hung in the air. A woman waited in the main courtyard, older, maybe 55, gray threading her dark hair. Her posture military straight, eyes sharp as broken glass. "Mira." She looked at Kale, then at Alara. A long, assessing look that missed nothing. "So, this is the complication." Her voice was clipped, professional, not hostile, but not welcoming either. "Alara Thorne," Kale said. "She saved my life, and she is under my protection." Mira's expression did not change. "We will see." She turned on her heel. "With me, both of you, war room now." The war room was exactly what it sounded like. A large table dominated the space, maps pinned to every wall, terrain, supply routes, enemy positions marked in red. 3 young warriors stood around the table. They straightened as Kael entered. "Finn, Rowan, Ash." Kael acknowledged them each with a nod. Finn was young, maybe 20, dark hair, eyes burning with something fierce. Rowan was older, mid-20s, lean, watchful. Ash was somewhere between, quiet, steady. "This is Alara. She will coordinate logistics for the extraction." Finn's eyes went wide. "An Omega? In the field?" His tone was not quite disrespectful, but close. "Yes." Kael's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "Is that a problem?" Finn hesitated, then shook his head. "No, my king." "Good." Kael turned to the map, pointed to 2 villages marked in the southern pass. "Lysander holds these. 40 hostages, 15 guards per village, snipers on the high points. We go in at dawn. 3-phase operation. Rowan scouts eliminate sentries. Main force breaches and secures hostages. Alara's medical team treats wounded and coordinates extraction." He looked at each of them. "Rules of engagement. No civilian casualties. Lysander's men surrender or die. Hostages extracted first. Combat second. Any questions?" Silence. Finn finally spoke. "What about the Omega? What happens when her scent leaks and we all go feral?" Every eye turned to Alara. She met Finn's gaze, held it. "Then you remember you are professionals, or you prove you are not." Kael's lips twitched, almost a smile. "She is right. Discipline or death, choose. Finn looked away first. Understood. They spent the next 6 hours planning. Every detail, every contingency. Alara absorbed it all. The tactical language, the precision, the way these warriors thought. It reminded her of watchmaking. Every gear had to mesh perfectly. One failure meant total breakdown. When they finally broke for the night, she was exhausted. But something had shifted. The young warriors looked at her differently, not with acceptance yet, but with consideration. Progress. Kael showed her to a small room in the tower, sparse, clean, a window overlooking the valley. Rest. Tomorrow we train, day after we move. He turned to leave. Kael. He stopped, looked back. Thank you for giving me something to do, something that matters. His expression softened, just slightly. You earned it. Same way everyone here earns their place, by proving your worth. He left. The door closed. Alara stood at the window, looking out at the citadel, at warriors training by firelight, at the mountains beyond. This was not her world, but maybe, just maybe, she could find a place in it. The next day was brutal. Dawn came early in the mountains. Before the sun crested the peaks, the courtyard was already full of warriors running drills. Kael ran them through the operation repeatedly. Not once, not twice, 7 times, until every movement was muscle memory, until the timing was perfect down to the second. Mock assaults on a building they had set up to mirror the church. Rowan's scouts practicing silent kills on dummies, positioned like sentries. The main breach team coordinating their entry. Stacked formation, angles of fire, flash and clear. Alara coordinated medical supplies with a precision that surprised even herself. She had done inventory before, but never for war, never knowing that these bandages, these antibiotics, would determine who lived and who died. She practiced triage scenarios with the medic team. A grizzled woman named Kara, who had seen 3 wars and had the scars to prove it. Kara put her through scenarios rapid fire, multiple casualties, limited supplies. Who do you save first? The abdominal wound or the compound fracture? Abdominal. He bleeds out in minutes. The fracture can wait. Correct. Head trauma or severed artery? Artery. I can stop the bleeding. Head trauma is beyond field medicine. Correct again. By midday, Kara was nodding approval. You think like a combat medic. Where did you learn this? My father, he was a soldier. Good man, then. We need more like him. By the time night fell, every muscle in Alara's body ached. Her hands cramped from packing medical kits. Her feet hurt from standing. But the plan was solid. They were as ready as they would ever be. She found Torin in the armory, cleaning weapons with methodical care, a ritual of preparation. Could not sleep either? He asked without looking up. Too much in my head. Normal before a mission. The ones who sleep easy are the ones who do not understand what is coming. He set down the rifle he had been working on, picked up another, started the process again. Your father and I sat like this the night before Black Ridge. Could not sleep. So we cleaned every weapon in the arsenal twice, talked about nothing, everything. Kept our hands busy so our minds would not run wild. What did you talk about? You mostly. He was worried, wanted to make sure if anything happened to him, I would look after you. Made me promise. Alara's throat tightened. I never knew that. He never wanted you to. Matthias carried his worries quiet. But he loved you fierce. Everything he did was to keep you safe. Torin looked at her then, his one good eye sharp. He would be proud of you now, seeing you here, not hiding, fighting. I am terrified. Good. So am I. So is everyone. Terror means you understand the stakes. You just cannot let it stop you from doing what needs to be done. He went back to his work. She sat with him in companionable silence until exhaustion finally pulled her toward sleep. The morning of the extraction came cold and clear, the kind of cold that burned the lungs, the kind of clear where you could see for miles. Perfect conditions for an ambush. 30 warriors assembled in the courtyard before dawn, armed, geared, each one checking their equipment with the practiced efficiency of professionals. Magazines loaded, weapons cleaned, knives sharpened, boots laced tight. Alara watched them. These men and women who were about to walk into potential death for people they had never met. Finn was among them, checking his rifle for the 3rd time, his hands steady but his eyes holding that burning intensity. Rowan stood apart, already in scout mode, silent, watchful, reading the wind, the light, calculating. Ash was laughing with another warrior. Easy, calm, the kind of calm that came from either experience or denial. Alara could not tell which. Kael moved among them, not inspecting. That would be insulting, just present. A hand on a shoulder here, a nod there, letting them feel his confidence, his certainty. When he reached the center of the formation, the chatter died. Every eye turned to him. His speech was short, direct, no wasted words. We do this for those who cannot fight for themselves. We do this because it is right. We do this because we are Ironwood, and Ironwood does not abandon its people. A low growl of agreement rippled through the assembled warriors. Not loud, but deep, felt in the chest. You have trained for this. You are ready for this. Trust your training, trust each other, and we all come home. He paused. Let that sink in. Move out. They moved. 30 warriors assembled in the courtyard, armed, geared, silent. Kale addressed them. Short speech, no wasted words. We do this for those who cannot fight for themselves. We do this because it is right. We do this because we are Ironwood, and Ironwood does not abandon its people. A low growl of agreement rippled through the assembled warriors. Move out. They moved through the mountains like ghosts, silent, disciplined. Ilara was in the center of the formation with the medic team, protected but present. But Torin moved beside her, keeping pace despite his age. Scared? Yes. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just do not let it freeze you. I will not. I know. You are Matthias's daughter. He never froze either. The village came into view at dawn. Small, maybe 20 structures. The church in the center, larger than the rest. That was where the hostages would be. Rowan's scouts moved first, shadows peeling away from the main group, silent as death. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. Then Rowan's voice, low, through the radio. Sentries down, you are clear. Kale's hand signal. The main force moved. Ilara stayed with the medics, in position behind a low ridge, watching. The breach was sudden, violent. The church door kicked in, shouts, gunfire, brief, controlled. Then Kale's voice. Hostages secure, 3 enemy down, 2 surrendered. Ilara's team moved into the church, 40 civilians huddled together, terrified, several wounded. She went to work, directing the medics, prioritizing injuries, calm, efficient. A young girl, maybe 8, stared at her with huge eyes. Are we safe now? Ilara knelt, met her gaze. Yes, you are safe. Outside, Kale was securing the perimeter. One of the surrendered guards was talking, giving information. Lysander knew you would come. He wanted you to. This was bait. Kale went very still. Explain. He has another force. Circling behind you now. You walked into the trap. In the distance, a sound. Vehicles. Many of them. Kale's eyes met Torin's across the courtyard. Get the hostages out now. Double time. They moved, fast, loading civilians into trucks, Ilara coordinating, making sure no one was left behind. The sound of engines grew louder. Finn appeared at her side, breathing hard. We have maybe 5 minutes before they are on us. She looked at the remaining hostages, still loading. We need 10. Then we fight for it. A sniper round cracked past her head. Close, too close. She did not freeze. Matthias's training took over. She dropped, rolled, came up behind cover. Finn's eyes were wide. How did you... My father taught me. More shots. The enemy was closing in. Kale was suddenly there, covering her position, returning fire with controlled bursts. Can you shoot? He thrust a pistol at her. Yes. Then do it. Suppressing fire. Do not try to hit anything. Just make them keep their heads down. She took the weapon. The weight familiar. Matthias had taught her this too. She fired, controlled, deliberate, keeping her breathing steady. Beside her, Kale fought with brutal efficiency. Every shot counted, every movement precise. The last truck pulled away, hostages clear. Fall back, Kale's command. They moved, covered retreat, disciplined even under fire. Made it to the vehicles, pulled out. Enemy forces reached the village minutes after they were gone. The drive back was tense, silent. 3 warriors wounded, 1 badly. Ash took a round in the chest. Ilara worked on him in the moving truck, hands steady despite the rough road. Stay with me, Ash, stay with me. His eyes found hers, trusting. She got the bleeding under control, stabilized him, barely. When they reached the citadel, he was still breathing. The medics took over, rushed him to the infirmary. Ilara stood in the courtyard, covered in his blood, shaking. Kale found her there. You saved him. Maybe, if he makes it through the night. He will, because of you. She looked up at him, at this king who had dragged her into hell. I hate this. I hate all of this. I know, but you did not run. You did not freeze. You fought. His hand came up, cupped her cheek, gentle despite the calluses. Your father would be proud. The words broke something in her. Tears came. Finally, she could not stop them. Kale did not tell her not to cry. He just pulled her against his chest, let her shake, let her grieve. When she finally pulled back, his shirt was wet with her tears. I am sorry. Do not be. You earned those tears. You earned everything today. He stepped back, Rest. Tomorrow we plan the defense. Lysander will be here in 72 hours. She nodded, exhausted beyond words, made it to her room, collapsed on the bed, slept, and dreamed of fire. She woke to chaos. Alarms shrieking through the citadel, boots pounding on stone, shouts echoing off walls. She stumbled to the window, still half asleep, the exhaustion from yesterday's extraction dragging at her limbs. The valley below was full of campfires, not dozens, hundreds, a sea of flame stretching across the approaches to the citadel. Tents, siege equipment, an army that had appeared overnight like a nightmare made manifest. Lysander had arrived early, a full day ahead of their intelligence. The siege had begun. She dressed quickly, moved toward the war room. The citadel was already transforming. Warriors manning the walls, civilians being moved to interior shelters, supplies being redistributed, the machine of war engaging. In the war room, Kael stood over the map table with Mira and Torin. His face was carved from stone. No emotion, pure tactical assessment. He has 280 confirmed, probably more hiding in the trees. Siege equipment includes 3 trebuchets, battering ram, scaling ladders. Mira's voice was clipped, professional. Our walls will hold against the ram. The trebuchets are the problem. If they get the range, they can drop stones into the inner courtyard. Civilians will be exposed. Can we counter battery? Kael asked. We have 1 working trebuchet, Torin said, against their 3. We can harass them, slow their setup, but we cannot outshoot them. Then we deny them the time to set up properly. Kael's finger traced the map. Harassment raids. Tonight, every night, keep them off balance, exhausted, unable to commit to full assault. He looked up at the assembled officers. This is not about winning glorious battles. This is about buying time, making him bleed for every inch, making the siege cost more than he is willing to pay. How long can we hold? One of the younger officers asked. Kael looked at Alara, at the supply manifest she had been updating. Alara? She stepped forward, all eyes on her, the unknown Omega who had appeared from nowhere. With current rationing, she said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart, we have 18 days of food, 23 days of water if we shut down the training yard cisterns and consolidate to main wells. Ammunition is more complicated. If we are conservative, only engaging when necessary, maybe 30 days. If we get into prolonged firefights, call it 12. 18 days then, Kael said. That is our window. After that, we starve or we sortie. Mira nodded. I will implement stricter rationing. 1 meal per day for warriors, half rations for civilians. No. Kael's voice was hard. Warriors get full rations. They are burning calories we cannot replace. Civilians can survive on less. We cannot ask them to fight on empty stomachs. Mira hesitated, then nodded. As you command. The first week was a nightmare of constant pressure. Lysander did not launch a full assault. He probed, tested, looking for weakness. Every morning, archers would rain arrows into the courtyard, not enough to breach defenses, just enough to force everyone into cover, to disrupt routines, to spread fear. Every afternoon, the trebuchets would wake up, hurling stones that crashed into walls, into buildings. The impacts shook the ground, made sleep impossible. Every night, Kael would take 20 warriors out through the hidden sally port on the north side. They would strike at Lysander's camp, kill sentries, burn supplies, destroy equipment, then fade back into the darkness before the enemy could organize pursuit. It was working, barely. Lysander's forces were exhausted, on edge, but so were theirs. Alara found herself working 18-hour days, coordinating supplies, treating wounded from the raids, managing the fear of the civilians who were trapped in a fortress that felt more like a tomb with each passing day. Finn became a regular presence. He had lost his friend Ash in the extraction. The young warrior had died, despite Alara's best efforts. Infection had taken him on day 3 of the siege. Finn did not blame her, but the grief made him reckless. He volunteered for every raid, took unnecessary risks. Kael finally pulled him aside. You want to die for your friend? That is your choice. But I will not let you take good warriors with you. I am not trying to die. Then stop fighting like a man who has nothing to live for. What do I have? Everyone I care about is dead or leaving. His eyes flicked to Alara, then away. The Omega is not one of us. She is the king's. She will leave when this is over. Alara was close enough to hear. The words stung more than she expected. That night, she found Finn on the wall, staring out at the enemy fires. I am not leaving. He did not turn. You should. This is not your fight. Maybe not, but I am here anyway. Why? What do you care about a pack you do not belong to? She thought about that, about the answer. Because I am tired of running, tired of being nothing. At least here I can do something, help someone. Finn finally looked at her. Ash liked you, said you had good hands, gentle but strong. He was right. His voice broke on the last word. I am sorry I could not save him. He nodded, unable to speak. They stood together in silence, two people who had lost too much, finding a fragile connection in shared grief. The second week brought escalation. Lysander's patience was fraying. The harassment raids were working too well. He needed to end this. The trebuchet barrage intensified. No longer scattered shots, focused bombardment on the north wall, the weakest section. By day 10, cracks were visible in the stonework. By day 12, a section collapsed, 20 feet wide, exposing the interior. Warriors rushed to shore up the breach with whatever they could find. Timber, rubble, bodies if necessary. Lysander saw the weakness and struck. 100 warriors hit the breach at dawn, a coordinated assault designed to punch through and split the defenders. Kale met them with everything he had. The fighting was brutal, close quarters, no room for tactics, just violence and will. Torin fought on the wall above the breach, directing fire, coordinating the defense with the calm of a man who had seen worse. Alara was in the courtyard, treating wounded as they were dragged back from the fighting. Blood soaked the ground. Screams filled the air. The smell of death was overwhelming. A young warrior, barely 18, was brought to her, gut wound, bleeding internally. She knew he would not make it, but she tried anyway, because that was all she could do. He died holding her hand, calling for his mother. She did not have time to grieve. Another wounded warrior was already being laid at her feet. The assault broke after 2 hours. Lysander's forces pulled back, 40 of his warriors dead, 20 of theirs. A costly victory, both sides bled. Kale found her in the aftermath. She was sitting against a wall, covered in other people's blood, staring at nothing. We held. His voice was hoarse. For how long? As long as we have to. He sat beside her. They did not speak. Just breathed. Just existed in the space between battles. Week 3 began with a new problem. Water. The main well was contaminated. Sabotage. A body dumped in during the night. Probably one of Lysander's infiltrators who had been caught and killed. The water was unusable. They had reserves, but not enough. Mira recalculated. 5 days of water left, maybe 6 if they stopped washing, stopped everything but drinking. Alara suggested collecting rainwater, setting up catchment systems on every roof. It was something, not enough, but something. Morale was cracking. Civilians were openly talking about surrender. Some of the warriors were wavering, wondering if the king's oath-breaking had doomed them all. A council was called. Elders demanded Kyle explain himself. Mira moderated, keeping order as voices rose. You broke sacred oath! One elder shouted. You brought this curse upon us. Lysander offers terms. Another said, give him the Omega. He withdraws. We survive. Kale stood silent, letting them vent, letting them speak their fear. Finally, Alara could not stay quiet. She stepped forward. I will not be traded like currency. My father taught me my worth is not in appeasing tyrants. She turned to Kale. If you surrender me, you prove Lysander right. That mates make you weak. If you fight, you prove partnership makes you stronger. Kale met her eyes. Something passed between them. Understanding. Decision. He turned to the council. We do not negotiate with butchers. We end them. Tomorrow night, I take 40 warriors. We kill Lysander in his tent. We cut the head off this army. It was a desperate gambit, risky beyond measure, but it was all they had left. That night, Kale prepared his team, 40 of his best, including Finn, including Torin. Alara pulled Torin aside. Come back. Plan to. Still have that promise to keep to Matthias. Be careful. Always am. He paused. If I do not make it back, know this. Your father was the best man I ever served with, and you are his worthy daughter. He would be so damn proud. Then he was gone, into the night. The raid went wrong from the start. Lysander was waiting. It was a trap. He had known they would try this, had set up a perfect kill box. The 40 warriors walked into an ambush, 150 enemies surrounding them. The radio traffic was chaos, screaming, gunfire, explosions. Alara stood in the war room, listening, helpless. Kale's voice came through, hard, commanding. Fall back! Fighting retreat! Get to the rally point! But Lysander had blocked their retreat route. They were surrounded. Torin's voice cut through the chaos. North wall breach. I will hold it. Get the king out. Negative, Kale's response. We leave together. Not this time, my king. Somebody has to buy the time. Might as well be the old man. The sound of grenades. Sustained gunfire. Torin had positioned himself in a choke point, a narrow passage that funneled the enemy into his kill zone. For 6 minutes he held that line. alone, against impossible odds. Kale and 32 warriors made it out. 8 did not. Torin was among the 8. When they recovered his body the next morning during a temporary ceasefire to collect the dead, they found him surrounded by 17 enemy corpses. He had died the way Matthias had died, buying time for others to live. The funeral was that evening. Brief, military, no wasted words. Kale spoke. Torin Ashford, Sergeant Major, brother in arms. He held the line when it mattered most. We are here because he was there. We will not forget. They buried him in the Citadel cemetery, with honors. Alara stood at the graveside, dry-eyed, too numb for tears. Finn stood beside her. He kept his promise to your father, kept you safe. I know. That is worth something. It is worth everything. That night, Lysander sent his terms again. Surrender the Omega. I withdraw. Kale burned the message. The siege continued. The dawn after Torin's funeral came gray and cold. No sun, just a low ceiling of clouds that pressed down on the citadel like a lid on a tomb. Alara stood on the wall, looking out at Lysander's camp. The campfires had multiplied overnight, more warriors arriving, the noose tightening. Supplies were at critical levels, 3 days of food remaining, 4 days of water if they were lucky, ammunition down to 30% of combat load. The math was simple and brutal. They could not hold much longer. Kael found her there. He stood beside her in silence for a long moment, both of them staring at the impossible odds arrayed against them. We have to break the siege. His voice was quiet, stating fact, not opinion. How? We are outnumbered 2 to 1, maybe worse now with the reinforcements. We make him come to us on ground we choose, force him to commit everything to one assault. Then we hit him where he is weak. He turned to face her. I need you to think like your father, like a soldier. Where is Lysander vulnerable? Alara's mind shifted gears, from fear to analysis. She thought about the terrain, the maps she had been studying, the layout of Lysander's camp, his supply lines. She said slowly, he has 200+ warriors. They need food, water, ammunition. All of it has to come through the Eastern Pass. Single road, narrow canyon. Kale's eyes sharpened. Go on. If we could block that pass, cut his supplies, he would have maybe 4 days before his army starts starving. He would have to either withdraw or assault immediately before his warriors are too weak to fight effectively. And if he assaults immediately, we would know exactly when and where. We could prepare, concentrate our defense. Kale was nodding, working through the implications. How do we block a canyon pass? Alara thought about the maps, about the terrain features. There are old mining tunnels in the canyon walls. Unstable. If we could trigger a collapse at the right point, bring down enough rock to block the road completely. You are talking about a major engineering effort, explosives, precise placement, timing. I know, but it is possible. Kale looked at her for a long moment, seeing something he had not seen before. You think like Matthias. Tactical, always looking for the leverage point. He taught me that every problem has a solution. You just have to be willing to see it, and willing to pay the price. Yes. Kale turned back to the enemy camp. We would need to send a team to the pass, plant the charges, trigger the collapse at exactly the right moment, all while Lysander's supply convoys are using that road. It would be a suicide mission. Not if we plan it right. He was quiet for a moment. Then he made his decision. Gather Mira, Rowan, and Finn. War room, 1 hour. We are ending this. The planning session was intense. Maps spread across the table in overlapping layers. Supply manifests with red ink marking critical shortages. Terrain analysis showing elevation changes, rock composition, structural weaknesses. Logistics calculations scrawled in Mira's precise handwriting. Mira was skeptical at first, as she should be. She had survived 3 wars by never accepting a plan at face value. You are asking us to send warriors deep into enemy territory, to plant explosives in unstable mining tunnels that could collapse at any moment from their own weight, to time a rock slide with precision down to the second to block the road, but not kill our own people in the process. The margin for error is not just small, it is non-existent. That is why we send our best, Kale said. His finger traced the canyon route on the map. The supply road, the tunnel entrances marked in faded pencil from surveys decades old. Rowan studied the topographical map with the eye of a man who had spent half his life reading terrain. He was the best scout in Ironwood, could move through enemy territory like smoke through trees. I can get a team to the tunnels. There is a ridge approach here. He pointed. Keeps us below the sightline from the road. Forest cover most of the way. But the placement of charges, the structural analysis, the timing calculations, that requires someone who understands rock dynamics. Someone who knows mining. Finn spoke up, his voice quiet but steady. I worked mining crew before I joined the Guard, 3 summers when I was 15, 16, 17. My father wanted me to learn a trade before I committed to warrior path. I know how to read rock, how to identify load-bearing points, where to place charges for maximum effect with minimum explosive. Every eye in the room turned to him. KL studied the young warrior, seeing past the grief, past the recklessness, to the competence beneath. You are volunteering. It was a statement, not a question. You understand what you are signing up for? Finn met his gaze without flinching, without the bravado that had defined him before Ash died. This was different. Quiet certainty. Torin bought us time with his life. Ash died buying us time. I can do the same if it means we win this war, if it means their deaths mattered. We are not asking you to die. Kale's voice was hard, clear. We are asking you to succeed, to place the charges, trigger the collapse, and get out alive. All of you. That is the mission. Then I will succeed. The conviction in his voice was absolute. Kale nodded slowly, accepting the commitment. Rowan, you lead the infiltration. 8 warriors total, your choice. Finn handles all demolition work. You get in, you plant the charges, you get out. Signal when you are clear. We trigger the collapse remotely from here. What about the timing? Mira asked, her mind already 3 steps ahead. We need to know exactly when Lysander's supply convoy is in the canyon. Not approximately. Exactly. Because if we blow it too early, we miss them and just piss off an army. Too late, and they are past the kill zone, and we have accomplished nothing. Alara spoke up. She had been quiet, listening, absorbing. Now she moved to the table, pulled out a notebook filled with her meticulous tracking. I have pattern data. She opened to a page covered in times, dates, observations. Lysander's supply logistics follow a rigid schedule. His convoys run every other day, always in the afternoon because the morning is when his warriors train and he needs the road clear for troop movements. 3 wagons every time, 15 guards standard, sometimes 20 if they are carrying ammunition or high-value supplies. She pointed to her calculations. Based on consumption rates I have been tracking, his next convoy moves tomorrow at 1400 hours, give or take 15 minutes for road conditions. If the pattern holds, and I have no reason to think it will not, they will be in the canyon between 1415 and 1430. Kale looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the tactical mind that had been hiding behind the scentless ghost. You have been tracking his logistics this whole time? Someone needed to. We had to know his consumption rate to predict how long he could sustain the siege. Food, water, ammunition, medical supplies. An army runs on logistics. Cut the logistics and the army dies. My father taught me that. Mira's expression shifted, from skepticism to something approaching admiration. That is very smart. The kind of intelligence work that wins wars. The plan solidified. Precise. Detailed. Every contingency mapped. Every timing window calculated. Rowan would select 7 warriors. Veterans he trusted. People who could move silent, fight when necessary, and most importantly, follow orders without question. They would move out at dusk tomorrow. Use the fading light and then darkness to cover their 12-mile approach through enemy territory. Reach the tunnel complex by midnight. Finn would spend the night hours analyzing the rock, calculating charge placement, rigging the explosives. They would be done by dawn, hidden and waiting. When the convoy entered the canyon the next afternoon, Finn would trigger the collapse. The road would be buried under thousands of tons of rock. Lysander cut off from resupply. His army would have 4 days, maybe 5 before starvation forced either retreat or desperate assault. And Ironwood would be ready either way. 12 hours to cross hostile ground, 6 hours to rig explosives in unstable tunnels, 12 hours to hide and wait, then extraction under cover of the chaos. No room for error, no backup plan, success or death. The room was silent as everyone absorbed what they were signing up for. Finally, Mira spoke. If this works, we win. If it fails, we lose 8 of our best warriors, and Lysander knows exactly what we tried. He will retaliate. Hard. Then we do not fail, Kale said. The meeting broke. Warriors moving to their tasks. Preparation. The quiet ritual before violence. Alara found herself helping them prep. It felt important, necessary. Each warrior needed specific supplies. Emergency rations calculated for 3 days in case extraction got complicated. medical supplies tailored to the injuries most likely in underground collapse, ammunition loads balanced for weight versus firepower. Finn approached her as the sun was beginning its descent toward the western peaks. His pack already loaded, his rifle cleaned and oiled, his face calm in a way she had not seen since before Ash died. "If this goes wrong, if I do not make it back, tell my sister I did not waste my death. Tell her it mattered, that I was trying to protect something worth protecting." Alara met his eyes. "It will not go wrong. You cannot promise that. No one can. Warfare is chaos. Plans are just intentions. Reality is whatever happens when everything goes sideways. No. But I can promise that no matter what happens, we will make it count. Your sacrifice, if it comes to that, will not be meaningless." He nodded, adjusted his pack straps, checked his rifle one more time even though it did not need checking. The ritual of preparation. The familiar when everything was uncertain. "Thank you. For trying to save Ash. For being here when you had no obligation to be. For giving a damn about people you did not know. I am exactly where I am supposed to be." He looked at her for a long moment, then gave her something close to a smile, the first real smile she had seen from him in weeks. "Matthias raised you right." Then he turned and joined his team. Kale walked them to the sallyport, spoke to each warrior individually. Low words, private. When he reached Finn, he gripped the young man's shoulder. "Your father served with honor. You carry that legacy well. I will not let you down. You never have." Then they were gone, into the darkness. 8 shadows disappearing into enemy territory. Alara stood with Kale on the wall, watching the direction they had gone even though there was nothing to see. "Now we wait," Kale said. "The hardest part." "Yes." They waited through the night, every hour feeling like 10. Radio silence. No way to know if the team was safe, compromised, or dead. Dawn came, still no word. Noon approached. Alara was in the war room, monitoring the radio, Mira beside her, both women tense. Kale was on the wall, watching the eastern pass through a telescope, looking for the supply convoy. 1300 hours. Nothing. 1330. Still nothing. 1345. Kale's voice on the radio. "Convoy spotted. 3 wagons, 20 guards, not 15. Moving into the canyon now." Alara keyed her mic. "Rowan, do you copy? Convoy in position. Repeat, convoy in position." "Static." Rowan confirmed status. More static. Then a voice, rough, strained. "We copy. Charges set. Triggers armed, but we have a problem." "What problem?" "Enemy patrol, 12 strong, between us and extraction point. We are pinned." Alara's blood went cold. "Can you bypass?" "Negative. They are set up on the only route out. We either go through them or we stay here." Kale's voice cut in. "Time to convoy reaching trigger point?" 4 minutes. "Can you eliminate the patrol in 4 minutes?" "Not without alerting the entire camp. Then you know what you have to do." Silence on the other end, then Finn's voice. "We blow it now, with us still inside the kill zone." Rowan's voice. "Negative. We can make it. We run. We blow it on the move." "Too risky." Finn again. "If the timing is off, we miss the convoy and this was all for nothing." "There has to be another way," Alara heard herself say. "There is not." Finn's voice was calm. "Certain. This is the mission. We do not get to choose the cost." Kale's voice was hard. "Rowan, you are team leader. Call it." Long silence, the longest of Alara's life. Finally, Rowan spoke. "Finn is right. We blow it now. Full team moves to secondary shelter point in Tunnel Branch 7. It is reinforced. We ride out the collapse, extract after." "Confirmed," Kale said. "All teams prepare for seismic event, brace for impact." Alara wanted to scream, to order them to run, to find another way. But there was no other way. Finn's voice came through one more time. "For Torin, for Ash, for Ironwood." Then the radio went dead. 5 seconds later, the world shook. The sound was not an explosion. It was deeper, primal, the sound of a mountain coming apart. Through the telescope, Kale watched the canyon wall collapse, millions of tons of rock cascading down. The convoy disappeared in an instant, buried, the road obliterated, a wall of debris 300 feet high blocking the pass completely. It worked, but the radio remained silent. Hours passed, no contact from Rowan's team. Kale sent a recovery team as soon as it was dark. 20 warriors to search the tunnels, to find survivors. Alara waited, unable to eat, unable to rest, just waited. Near midnight, the recovery team reported in. "We found them. Tunnel Branch 7, 6 survivors, 2 KIA. "Who?" Kale's voice was steady, but Alara could hear the tension beneath. "Finn and Corporal Hayes. The tunnel ceiling came down on their position. They did not make it to the shelter in time. Bring them home, all of them." The survivors were carried into the citadel on stretchers, battered, broken bones, lacerations, but alive. Rowan had a concussion and a shattered collarbone, but he was conscious, coherent. Finn stayed behind. He made sure the rest of us got to shelter. Then he triggered the charges. He knew he would not make it. Like Torin, like Ash, another sacrifice. Alara helped treat the wounded, her hands steady even as her heart broke. When the survivors were stable, she went to the morgue, where they had laid out Finn's body. He looked young, too young, his face peaceful despite the violence of his death. She stood there for a long time, no tears, just a profound aching grief. Kale found her there. He did not waste his death. The pass is blocked. Lysander's supplies are cut. We won. Then why does it feel like losing? Because we paid in blood. Good blood, the best of us. He moved to stand beside her, but they would do it again. Every one of them. Because this is what it means to serve something bigger than yourself. He laid a hand on Finn's still chest. Rest well, warrior. Your watch is ended. They buried Finn beside Torin. Military honors. The whole garrison in attendance. Alara noticed something during the service. The way the warriors looked at her. Not with suspicion anymore. With acceptance. She had stood with them, bled with them, mourned with them. She was Pack now, whether she wanted to be or not. The effects of the blocked pass were immediate. By the second day, Lysander's camp was in disarray. Rationing, infighting, desertion. By the third day, he sent a message. Single combat, king to king, winner takes the field, loser stands down. Kale read the message, looked at Mira. Opinions? It is a trap, she said flatly. He has never honored the old codes before. Why start now? Because he is desperate. His army is fracturing. He needs a decisive victory or they will abandon him. So you just walk into his trap? No, I set terms. Neutral ground. Witnesses from both sides. No interference. Old law combat. To the death. You could lose. I could, but I will not. His certainty was absolute. Alara spoke up. Let me come, as witness. Why? Because if you die, someone needs to tell the story, and I will not let him twist the truth. Kale studied her. You are not a warrior. No, but I am Pack, and Pack witnesses when their alpha faces death. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe more. Very well, you witness, but you stay back, out of the kill zone. Agreed. The combat ground was chosen, a clearing halfway between the citadel and Lysander's camp. Open, flat, no cover, no advantage. Both sides sent witnesses, 20 from each army, warriors who would ensure the rules were followed. Alara stood with the Ironwood contingent, Mira beside her. If Kale falls, we run. We do not have the strength to fight our way out. Understood. Lysander arrived with his entourage. He was younger than Kyle, maybe 32, handsome, charismatic, the kind of alpha who led through charm and promises. But his eyes were cold, calculating. He saw Alara, his gaze lingered. So this is the Omega who broke the oath, the weakness that will destroy you. Kale's voice was ice. She is my strength. You will learn the difference before you die. Bold words for a cursed king. The only curse here is your ambition. You would burn the world to rule its ashes. Better ashes than your tyranny. The Arbiter, a neutral alpha from a distant pack, stepped forward. Rules are simple. Combat to the death. No weapons beyond what you carry on your person. No interference from witnesses. Break these rules and your entire force is forfeit. Both combatants nodded. Begin. They circled each other. Two alphas, two philosophies of leadership, two visions of what their people could become. Only one would walk away. The crowd was silent. Witnesses from both armies forming a loose circle, 20 meters across, room enough to fight, close enough to see every detail. Lysander moved first. He was younger, faster, his body still carrying the easy strength of a man in his prime who had not been ground down by years of command. He lunged forward, a testing strike, trying to close distance and use his speed advantage. Kale sidestepped with minimal movement. Economy of motion. He had been fighting for 18 years, every move efficient, no wasted energy. His counterstrike came fast and precise, a hammer fist to Lysander's exposed ribs. Solid impact. The sound of it carried across the clearing. Lysander rolled with the blow, his training showing. He came up grinning, playing to the crowd, trying to make this look easy. Is that all the Winterwolf has left? I expected more from the legend. Kale did not respond, did not rise to the bait. He simply reset his stance, continued the circle. Lysander attacked again, this time with more commitment. A combination. Strike to the head, then body, then legs, trying to overwhelm with volume. Kale blocked the first two, let the leg strike connect, took it on his thigh, absorbed the pain without reaction. Then he countered. A straight punch to Lysander's face that snapped his head back. Blood sprayed from a split lip. First blood. Lysander spat red. His grin faded. This was not going the way he had planned. He reached for something at his belt, too fast for most to see, but Alara caught it. A glint of metal, a blade, hidden against the rules but subtle enough that many witnesses might miss it. Kael saw it too. His eyes tracked the movement, calculated. Lysander struck with the blade, a slash aimed at Kael's throat. Kael twisted. The blade scored his forearm instead. A long cut, not deep but enough to bleed. The crowd erupted, some shouting foul, others claiming they saw nothing. The arbiter stepped forward, uncertain. Lysander held up his empty hands, proving he was not hiding anything now. The blade already dropped into the grass. A misunderstanding, my apologies. But the damage was done. The cut was edged with silver. Kael could feel it already, the burn spreading, his shifter healing slowing, poison entering his system. Alara wanted to scream, to stop this, to demand justice for the broken rule, but Kael gave the slightest shake of his head. No, let it play out. Let everyone see what Lysander truly was. The arbiter allowed the fight to continue. Lysander pressed his advantage. He knew the silver was working, knew Kael would weaken as it spread through his blood. He attacked with renewed confidence, brutal combinations, no finesse now, just overwhelming force. Kael gave ground, deliberately. Let Lysander think he was winning. Let him commit, get overconfident. The rage was building inside Kael. Alara could see it, the way his eyes began to change, the gold growing brighter, more feral, the curse responding to the pain, to the threat, to the presence of the poison. This was the danger, the reason for the oath. If the rage took control, if Kael became the monster his father had been, he would tear Lysander apart and prove everything the rebels said about the curse being too dangerous. But Kael held it, barely, the discipline of 18 years channeling the fire instead of letting it consume him. Lysander threw sand, grabbed from the ground in a handful and flung it at Kael's face. Dirty tactic, dishonorable. Kael turned his head, took it on the side instead of in the eyes. His vision blurred but not blinded. Lysander followed up with a knee to the gut, then an elbow to the back of the head, trying to drive Kael to the ground. Kael absorbed both strikes, let Lysander think he was dazed, then exploded upward. A headbutt that caught Lysander square in the nose, the crunch of cartilage, more blood. Lysander staggered back, his nose shattered, blood streaming down his face. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Kael advanced, not rushing, measured, inevitable. Lysander tried a desperation tackle, charging low, trying to take Kael's legs out from under him. Kael saw it coming 3 steps away. He pivoted, let Lysander's momentum carry him past, then reached down, grabbed Lysander by the belt and shoulder, used the man's own force against him. A combat throw. Perfect technique. Lifting Lysander completely off the ground and slamming him down with all the power in Kael's frame. The impact was massive. It drove the air from Lysander's lungs, possibly cracked ribs, definitely stunned him. Kael was on him instantly, knee on chest, hand at throat, dominant position. Yield. The word was quiet, not shouted, but everyone heard it in the sudden silence. Lysander's eyes were wild, panicked. He had been so certain of his superiority, so convinced that Kael's age and the curse would make him vulnerable. He had been wrong. Never. Lysander's hand scrabbled at his boot, another hidden blade, smaller, a last desperate weapon. He stabbed upward, aiming for Kael's heart, hoping to end it with one strike. Alara saw it happening. Time seemed to slow, the blade rising, Kael vulnerable above him, the moment of potential death. Then Kael's free hand moved, faster than should be possible for a man his size, caught Lysander's wrist, stopped the blade 2 inches from his chest, held it there, showing complete control. Then he squeezed. Bones cracked, small bones in the wrist. The blade fell from nerveless fingers. You fight without honor. Kael's voice was cold, final. You hide behind human mercenaries to do your killing. You take hostages, using children as shields. You poison water supplies. You smuggle blades into honor combat. You break every code that separates us from animals. His grip on Lysander's throat tightened. I should kill you for that alone, for showing everyone that you have no principles, only ambition. Then do it. Lysander's voice was strangled but defiant. At least I die fighting for what I believe. What do you believe? Power for its own sake? Control because you crave it? or just that you deserve a crown you never earned. I believe you are weak, that taking a mate broke you, that the curse will destroy everything you touch eventually. Kael's eyes found Alara across the clearing. Wrong. His voice gentled slightly, but remained hard. She does not make me weak. She makes me better. She shows me what I am fighting for beyond just survival, beyond just maintaining power through fear. She gives me a reason to be more than the curse. He looked back at Lysander. She taught me that real strength is not in violence alone, it is in control. In choosing who you want to be, instead of letting your blood decide for you. In building something that lasts, instead of just tearing down what others built. Lysander tried to speak, could not. The pressure on his throat too great. Kael held his gaze. You never learned that lesson. You only know how to take, how to break, how to rule through fear and intimidation. You would make a terrible king. He paused. But maybe you could learn to be a decent Lord Regent. Lysander's eyes widened, confusion and disbelief warring in his expression. What? Kael released the pressure on his throat slightly, enough for Lysander to breathe, to speak. I could kill you now. End this with your blood on my hands. Prove to everyone that I am exactly the monster they fear. Give your followers a martyr to rally around for the next generation of rebellion. He shifted his weight, still dominant but no longer crushing. Or I can offer mercy. Not because you deserve it, but because I am tired of burying good warriors, because this war has cost both our armies too much already. Because maybe, just maybe, you can learn to channel your ambition into building instead of destroying. He looked at the assembled witnesses, both armies watching. So here is my offer, Lysander. Yield. Swear fealty to the Ironwood crown. You keep your southern territories. You govern them as Lord Regent under my rule. You get to prove you can lead without breaking every code we have. Break that oath and there will be no second mercy. The clearing was dead silent. This was unprecedented. Alpha combat was always to the death, always had been. The old laws demanded it. But Kael was writing new laws, showing a different way. Lysander lay there, defeated, humiliated, his entire worldview shattered. He had been so certain that Kael's mercy toward his mate was weakness, that the bond had made him vulnerable. Instead, it had made him strong enough to choose mercy even for an enemy who had shown none. Finally, Lysander spoke. Why? The question was barely a whisper. Because killing you changes nothing. Teaching you might actually accomplish something. And because I need people who understand the South, who the clans there will follow. You can be that person, if you choose to be. Kael released him completely, stood, stepped back, offered his hand. Lysander stared at that hand, at the gesture of respect offered to a defeated, dishonorable opponent, at the chance to rebuild instead of die. Slowly his hand reached up, grasped Kael's, let himself be pulled to his feet. The witnesses erupted, not in cheers, in complete stunned silence and then heated debate. This was not how these things were supposed to end. There was supposed to be death, blood, finality. Instead, there was something harder, forgiveness, a chance at redemption. Kael addressed both armies, his voice carrying across the clearing. The war is over, effective immediately. Lysander's forces will return to the southern territories where they belong. He will govern as Lord Regent, maintaining order and reporting to the Ironwood crown. Any warrior who wishes to leave his service and join mine is welcome to do so without reprisal. Any who wish to stay loyal to Lysander may do so. I will not punish warriors for following their alpha. He paused. Let that sink in. We have all bled enough. We have all lost friends, brothers, sisters, people we cared about. It is time to stop destroying each other and start building something worth the sacrifices we have made. Lysander stood beside him, still processing what had just happened, still unable to fully comprehend that he was alive. Kael turned to him. Why did you spare me? Because killing you would have been easy. It would have been what everyone expected. But teaching you, giving you the chance to be better than your worst instincts, that might actually change something. You trust me? Kael's smile was grim. No, not even a little. But I am giving you the opportunity to earn that trust. Do not make me regret it. Lysander nodded slowly, the weight of the responsibility settling on him. I will not forget this. Good, do not give me cause to regret it either. The armies began to disperse, warriors from both sides mingling, not as enemies, not quite as friends, but as people who were tired of war. Alara made her way to Kael. He was favoring his injured arm, the silver burn still hurting. Let me see that. He let her examine the wound. It was shallow but ugly. She cleaned it, bandaged it with steady hands. You took a risk, sparing him. I know. What if he betrays you? Then I will deal with it. But I had to try. If we just keep killing each other, when does it end? She nodded, understanding the weight of that choice. Matthias would have done the same. Mercy when possible, violence when necessary, but always choosing which with intention. I hope I am half the man he was. You are becoming your own man, that is better. They walked back to the citadel together, side by side. The siege lifted, the war over. The work of peace was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, the world slowly stitched itself back together. The north wall was repaired, stone by stone, each block laid by warriors who had defended it. The work was slow, deliberate, a meditation on what they had survived. The infirmary gradually emptied as wounds healed. Some warriors returned to duty, others did not. The cemetery gained new markers, names carved in stone, remembered. Lysander withdrew to the southern territories. His first reports arrived within days, detailed, transparent, showing he understood the fragility of the trust he had been given. Mira made the journey south to verify his commitments. She returned cautiously optimistic. He was trying. That was more than most had expected. A grand council was called. Representatives from every major pack, neutral territories, even some of the more reasonable rogue clans. The hall was packed, tensions high. Kael proposed his new laws before the assembled leaders, not as commands but as proposals, respecting the process even though he held the power to simply decree. Alphas may mate if the bond proves stabilizing rather than destructive. His own curse, controlled for over a year, served as evidence. The old fear that bonds amplified madness was being rewritten by lived experience. Warriors may earn rank through demonstrated merit and skill, not solely through bloodline. The siege had proven that courage existed in unexpected places. Civilians who had fought with honor would be given the chance to serve. Rules of engagement would be codified and enforced. No hostages, no civilian targets, no poison tactics. Honor in warfare as law, not suggestion. Lysander's methods had shown everyone what happened when the codes were abandoned. The debates were fierce. Traditionalists resisted. But the younger generation had fought the war. They had seen what worked and what did not. They voted for change. Each law passed, not unanimously, but by clear majorities that spoke to a shifting world. Alara stood with Mira during the final vote, watching the history being made. When her own recognition came, it was not through ceremony or coronation. Mira simply stood before the council and spoke plainly. Alara Thorne coordinated the logistics that kept us alive during siege. She earned the respect of warriors through competence and courage. She has proven what an Omega can be to a pack when given the chance. I move that she be recognized as Luna of Ironwood. The vote was overwhelming. Alara stood before hundreds of alphas and warriors. She thought of the ghost she had been, the girl erasing herself in a clock shop. That version of herself felt like a stranger now. She had chosen to be real, to matter, and they had accepted her. Not because of magic, because of what she had earned. 6 months passed. Spring came to the mountains in a rush of meltwater and new growth. The citadel transformed from a war fortress into something more. A center of governance, of trade, of learning. Warriors still trained in the yards. But civilians walked the same halls without fear. The first class of merit-based recruits graduated. 40 new warriors who had proven themselves worthy regardless of who their parents were. Among them were survivors of the siege, people who had fought when they had no obligation to do so. They took their oaths in a ceremony that honored both tradition and the new order, swearing to protect, to serve with honor, to uphold the codes that now had weight of law. Alara watched from the tower balcony, Kael beside her, both of them seeing the future taking shape. The scars remained, on walls, on bodies, on hearts, Torrin's grave in the cemetery, Finn's marker beside ashes, the names of all who had fallen. They would not be forgotten. Their sacrifice had bought this chance at something better. But peace was never permanent, just the space between challenges. Reports had been filtering in for weeks, eastern territories growing unstable, rogue packs consolidating under a new warlord who called himself the Black Fang, making threats, testing boundaries, building an army. It would require a response, military, political, diplomatic, all the tools they had spent 6 months sharpening. That evening, Alara stood on the balcony watching the sun set over mountains still capped with snow. The air was cool but no longer brutal. Spring was winning its battle with winter. Kael found her there, stood beside her without speaking. They had learned the comfort of shared silence. After a long moment, he spoke. The eastern situation is escalating. Scouts report the Black Fang has 200 warriors now, maybe more. We will need to respond soon. She nodded, already thinking through logistics, supply lines, alliance structures. The lessons of the siege applied to new problems. Diplomacy first? She asked. Always, but we prepare for the alternative. How long do we have? Weeks. Maybe a month before he makes a move. Enough time to plan, to build support, to do this right. She turned to face him. This man who had bled into her shop on a storm-drenched night, who had dragged her out of hiding and forced her to become real, who had shown her that partnership was not weakness, but the truest form of strength. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That my father was right. I am stronger than I thought. But not because I am alone anymore, because I found people worth being strong for." He smiled, rare and genuine, the kind of expression that transformed his harsh features into something almost gentle. "We all did. That is the real victory, not the battles won, the bonds forged." They stood together as night fell, stars emerging in a sky so clear it felt infinite. Below them, the citadel was alive with purpose. Warriors on watch, civilians going about their evening routines, children playing in courtyards that had been battlefields. Life continuing, life growing, life worth protecting. The eastern threat would come. Other challenges would follow. That was the nature of leadership, the endless work of trying to build something that lasted. But they were ready. Not because they were perfect, not because they had all the answers, but because they had learned what mattered. Control before strength, discipline before rage, honor before victory, partnership before isolation, together before alone. Alara looked out at the citadel, at her pack, her people, her home. She had spent 10 years being nothing, being invisible, being safe in the only way she knew. Then a wounded king had crashed into her life and shown her a different kind of safety, the kind that came from standing with others, from fighting for something bigger than survival, from choosing to matter even when it was dangerous. She had made that choice every day since. She would keep making it. Kael's hand found hers. Scarred palm against scarred palm. The brand had long since faded to silver lines, but the bond remained. Not magic, not destiny, just two people who had chosen each other, who kept choosing each other. Tomorrow they would start planning for the Eastern campaign, building alliances, preparing defenses, doing the hard work of leadership. But tonight they had this: peace, purpose, partnership. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Far below, in the training yard, an instructor's voice carried on the evening wind. Control before strength, discipline before rage, honor before victory. Torin's words, Matthias's lessons, the code they lived by now. The legacy was not bloodline, not power passed through generations. It was this: the choice to be better than your worst impulses, to build instead of destroy, to protect instead of conquer. That was the real strength, the only strength that endured. Kael turned to her. "Ready for tomorrow?" She smiled, looked out at the mountains, at the future spreading before them like an unwritten page. Together? Together. They stood as night deepened, two scarred warriors who had found their place, their purpose, their pack. The story was not over, would never be fully over, because that was life, an ongoing series of choices, challenges, victories, and losses. But they were ready, for the Eastern warlord, for the politics, for whatever came next, because they had learned the secret that Matthias had known, that Torin had died protecting, that Finn had understood at the end. Strength was not in standing alone. It was in knowing who to stand beside. And they had found each other. That was victory enough.